a young hobbit named Frodo Baggins inherited a simple gold ring, unaware that it held the fate of all Middle-earth. This video contains the complete stories of the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King. This is the entire story of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Sit back, relax, and let us begin. Prologue. The prologue introduces hobbits, their habits, homes, and history. Small, peaceable, and fond of comfort, they dwell in neat, round-doored houses built into the hills. They enjoy simple routines, hearty meals, and the quiet pleasures of gardening and good company. Government in the Shire is almost unnecessary. Life is ordered by decency and habit rather than law. The sheriffs, the closest thing to an authority, spend more time chasing stray animals than keeping people in line. Hobbits are easily overlooked by the big folk, yet they possess a quiet toughness and a surprising endurance. Long ago, they shared kinship with men, though the records of that connection have long been lost. The prologue also recounts how Bilbo Baggins once came upon a strange golden ring in the depths beneath the Misty Mountains. He took it from a creature named Gollum, and later claimed, falsely, that he had won it fairly in a riddle game. Only when Gandalf pressed him did Bilbo admit the truth of how he had taken it. Bilbo Baggins' 111th birthday arrives, coinciding with Frodo's 33rd, the age at which hobbits come of age. Bilbo plans a grand farewell celebration, known to all the Shire for its fireworks, feasting, and gossip. Only Gandalf and Frodo know that Bilbo possesses a mysterious ring that grants invisibility and seems to have slowed his aging. At the height of the party, Bilbo announces his intention to leave the Shire forever and vanishes before his astonished guests. He returns to Bag End in amusement, gathers a few belongings, and prepares for his final journey to the mountains to finish his book. Gandalf arrives to see him off. Bilbo confides that he feels strangely weary and stretched thin, as though the years have caught up to him all at once. When the wizard reminds him to leave the ring for Frodo, Bilbo grows defensive, calling it his own and feeling a wave of possessiveness that quickly turns to shame. At last, he releases it and leaves Bag End lighter in heart. Gandalf refuses to touch the ring himself, placing it instead on the mantle. When Frodo later inherits the house and the ring, Gandalf warns him to keep it secret and to treat it with great caution before departing to learn more about its true nature. Years pass quietly. Frodo honors Bilbo's birthday each year, and the people of the Shire begin to whisper that he hardly seems to age at all. News from beyond their borders grows dark, rumors of unrest in Mirkwood and of the Dark Tower rising again in Mordor. One spring morning, Gandalf returns to Bag End carrying grim knowledge. He reveals that the ring Bilbo left behind is none other than the One Ring of Sauron. Long ago, Sauron deceived the elves into crafting rings of power, promising them wisdom and beauty. In secret, he forged a master ring in the fires of Mount Doom, binding the others to his will. 3 he gave to the elves, 7 to the dwarves, and 9 to mortal men, who, enslaved by their rings, became the Nazgul. Sauron was eventually overthrown when Isildur, a king of men, cut the ring from his hand. Yet Isildur kept the ring for himself and was slain soon after, losing it in the river Anduin. Ages later, a creature named Smeagol found it in the river, and corrupted by its power, murdered his friend who had discovered it first. The ring granted him invisibility and unnaturally long life, but it consumed his mind and body until he became Gollum, haunting the dark caverns beneath the Misty Mountains. He cherished the ring for centuries until it abandoned him, and came into Bilbo's hands. Gandalf explains that the ring is alive in its own way, with a will that seeks to return to its master. Gandalf once doubted its identity, since Bilbo seemed little affected by it for many years. But when Bilbo struggled to give it up, Gandalf's fears returned. After long study and testing the ring in fire, he discovered the ancient words that appear only when it is heated, proof that it is the One Ring of Sauron. The wizard also tells Frodo that with help from a ranger named Aragorn, he found Gollum and learned terrible news. Sauron has returned, gathering strength in Mordor. Gollum was captured and tortured until he revealed the name Baggins, leading Sauron's servants to the Shire. The ring, Gandalf warns, must be destroyed. Frodo wishes Bilbo had slain Gollum, but Gandalf replies that Bilbo's mercy was what spared him from the ring's corruption, and that Gollum may yet play some unknown role in what lies ahead. When Frodo tries to throw the ring into the fire, he finds himself unable to let it go. Gandalf explains that this is its power. It tempts its bearer to possess it, Only by casting it into the volcanic fires of Mount Doom can it be destroyed. Gandalf refuses to bear it himself, knowing that such power would twist even him to evil. Bilbo, he says, is the only one who ever gave it up willingly. Accepting his task, Frodo resolves to leave the Shire. Before they can plan further, Gandalf and Frodo discover that Samwise Gamgee, Frodo's gardener, has been listening outside the window. Instead of scolding him, Gandalf declares that Sam will accompany Frodo. Though frightened, Sam is thrilled by the thought of seeing elves and vows to stay beside his master wherever the road may lead. Frodo decides to delay his departure until autumn, so his absence will appear natural to the Shire folk. To avoid suspicion, he sells Bag End to Lobelia Sackville Baggins, a jealous relative long coveting Bilbo's home, and claims he is simply moving back to his childhood village of Buckland. The neighbors whisper that he must be broke, or that Bilbo's gold lies buried somewhere under the hill. Though Gandalf knows the ring must eventually be destroyed in Mordor, he urges Frodo to make for Rivendell first, where they can seek counsel from Elrond and the High Elves. Gandalf remains for a short while, then leaves on urgent business to the south, promising to return by Frodo's 50th birthday, the chosen date for the journey. When that day comes, Gandalf does not appear. Frodo's closest friends, Pippin Took, Merry Brandybuck, and Fredegar Bolger, help him pack and move to Buckland. On the evening of his departure, Frodo overhears talk of a strange black-cloaked visitor asking after him, and unease settles over the group. Traveling by night, Frodo, Sam, and Pippin set out singing to keep their spirits high, but the cheer fades as they sense a shadow following them. More than once they hide from black-robed horsemen whose very presence chills the air. Each time the riders draw near, Frodo feels an almost irresistible pull to slip on the ring, yet the instinct to hide wins out, and the danger passes. Leaving the road, the hobbits wander through the woods until they hear distant singing. A company of elves, led by Gildor and Glorion, appears like moonlight moving through the trees. The elves offer them food, rest, and gentle conversation. Sam, long enchanted by tales of the fair folk, is struck silent by awe. Sensing that Frodo's errand is serious, Gildor advises him to travel with loyal companions and warns that the Black Riders are servants of the enemy. Before departing, he promises to send word ahead to those who may watch over the travelers as they continue east. Refreshed by their night among the elves, the three hobbits set off toward Buckleberry Ferry to cross the Brandywine River into Buckland. Frodo wrestles with guilt for endangering his friends, but Sam insists that no danger will turn him back. He admits that seeing the elves has changed him, that they seem both ancient and young, joyous and sorrowful, and that something in him now feels called to a greater purpose. The group spots another Black Rider on their trail and decides to cut through Farmer Maggot's fields to save time. Frodo still dreads facing the farmer, remembering a youthful misadventure when Maggot caught him stealing mushrooms and set his dogs on him. To Frodo's surprise, Maggot greets them kindly and warns that one of the mysterious riders had visited earlier asking after a Baggins. Distrusting the stranger, Maggot refused to help him. He feeds the hobbits a hearty meal and drives them in his wagon toward the ferry. Frodo realizes with embarrassment that the farmer he once feared is braver and kinder than he had known. When they reach the ferry landing, the sound of hoofbeats sends a chill through them, but the rider turns out to be Merry, come to find his missing friends. As they part ways with Maggot, Frodo discovers that the farmer's parting gift is a basket full of fresh mushrooms, reminding him how far he has come from the timid hobbit he once was. Crossing the river, the hobbits arrive safely in Buckland, a region shielded from the old forest by the tall hedge called the High Hay. Bucklanders are more cautious than other hobbits. Even locking their doors at night, Merry has prepared warm baths and supper at Frodo's new house in Crick Hollow, where Fatty Bolger waits to greet them. Frodo plans to tell his friends that he must soon leave the Shire behind, but before he can speak, Merry and Pippin reveal that they already know. They have been quietly watching his strange behavior and Gandalf's mysterious visits, piecing together the truth. Merry admits he has long suspected Bilbo's ring was magical, and even read parts of Bilbo's old writings. The three proudly call themselves a conspiracy, with Sam as their chief investigator, having overheard much of Frodo's talk with Gandalf. Frodo is stunned, but deeply moved by their loyalty. Remembering Gildor's counsel not to travel alone, he accepts their companionship. Though afraid, his friends insist they will follow him wherever the road leads. Fatty Bolger agrees to remain behind to keep up the illusion that Frodo still lives in Crick Hollow, and to inform Gandalf should he return. With plans made and courage gathering, The hobbits rest one final night before stepping beyond the borders of their quiet world. At dawn, Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin ride their ponies through a gate in the great hedge and cross into the old forest. Merry warns the others that the trees of this ancient wood are alive in their own strange way, watchful, brooding, and hostile to intruders. Long ago, the hobbits of Buckland cut down many trees near the hedge to keep the forest at bay, and ever since, the trees have grown resentful and unfriendly. Merry takes the lead, but even his familiarity with the region offers little help. The paths twist and change as if the forest itself conspires against them. The air grows stifling, and a heavy drowsiness settles over the travelers. Frodo and the others drift into an enchanted sleep, while Sam alone resists. When he wakes Frodo, they realize that the forest has drawn them toward a dark, sluggish river. Great roots of an ancient willow have ensnared them, and the tree begins to pull Frodo into the water while swallowing Pippin and trapping Merry in its massive trunk. Sam and Frodo desperately try to set a fire to save their friends, but the flames only enrage the tree. At that moment, they hear the sound of cheerful singing drifting through the woods. A strange figure appears, a man in bright blue and yellow with a feather in his hat, singing as he walks. This is Tom Bombadil, older than the forest itself, neither quite man nor elf. With a few commanding verses, he subdues the tree and releases the hobbits. Laughing and singing, Tom leads them to his home, where safety and warmth await. In Tom's house, the hobbits meet Goldberry, his wife and the river daughter, who greets them like a figure from legend, radiant and kind. She calls Tom the master of wood, water, and hill, and though the title sounds grand, Tom himself is humble and filled with mirth. The hobbits quickly lose all sense of fear or hurry in his presence. Time seems to pause around him. They eat hearty meals, rest in soft beds, and feel as though the world's troubles have fallen away. That night, Frodo, Merry, and Pippin each dream uneasy dreams of the Black Riders, the whispering trees, and drowning waters, but they wake safe in the morning light. Only Sam sleeps peacefully through the night, untouched by any vision. During their stay, Tom shares songs and tales of the land's ancient past, the old forest, the barrows of forgotten kings, and the rise and fall of men and their kingdoms. He speaks of both the cruel and the kind, the dark and the good, weaving history and myth into a single living story. The hobbits cannot tell how many days pass, for all sense of time fades in Tom's house. When Frodo finally asks who he truly is, Tom explains that he is the eldest. He was here before the river and the trees, before the elves sailed west, before even the coming of the Dark Lord. To the hobbit's amazement, the ring holds no sway over him. It cannot make him invisible, nor does he vanish when he slips it on. Tom can even see Frodo while the ring is on his finger. Before the hobbits depart, Tom teaches them a song they can call upon if they ever find themselves in danger, and promises to guide them safely out of the forest. Leaving Tom and Goldberry behind, the hobbits follow his directions toward the east road, passing the Barrow Downs, an eerie region of ancient burial mounds, said to be haunted by Barrow-wights, spirits that dwell among the tombs. To avoid the cursed hills, they travel along the edges of the downs, but as the heat grows heavy, they rest beside a cool standing stone. One by one, they fall under an enchantment and drift into sleep. When Frodo awakens, the world is shrouded in dense fog, and his friends are gone. Disoriented, he stumbles between two great barrows and is seized by a wight. When he regains consciousness, he finds himself lying on a stone slab inside a tomb. His friends lie beside him, pale and unmoving, their bodies draped in the robes and gold of the dead, and a long sword rests across their throats. Shadows gather as the wight's cold voice chants in the darkness. Overcome with terror, Frodo feels the ring tugging at him to flee and abandon his friends. But he fights the urge and instead calls out for help. Remembering Tom's song, he begins to sing, his voice trembling but determined. Suddenly, Tom Bombadil's answering song fills the barrow, and light floods the chamber. The wight vanishes, banished by Tom's power. Tom helps the hobbits recover, gathers their lost ponies, and brings out 4 ancient daggers from the tomb, blades forged long ago by the men of Westerness in wars against the servants of darkness. He instructs them to cast aside the garments of the dead and run free in the sunlight, before guiding them safely to the east road. With a cheerful farewell, he turns back toward the old forest, leaving them strengthened for the road ahead. Following Tom's advice, the hobbits journey north to the village of Bree. and find lodging at the Prancing Pony, a famous inn that serves both men and hobbits. Bree is a rare meeting place between the big folk and the little folk, and travelers from many lands cross paths there. To avoid drawing notice, Frodo gives his name as Underhill, but curiosity quickly follows the new arrivals. Inside the common room, the atmosphere is lively with song, talk, and ale. Pippin begins telling tales that edge dangerously close to mentioning Bilbo and the name Baggins. To divert attention, Frodo stands on a table and sings, but in his excitement he slips, and in the fall, the ring slides onto his finger. He vanishes in front of everyone. The crowd erupts in alarm, and when Frodo reappears moments later, no explanation can calm the uneasy stares. Whispers spread quickly through the room. Among the onlookers is a tall, weathered man who introduces himself as Strider, a ranger known for his strange ways and watchful eyes. He warns Frodo that he has made a serious mistake. There are spies and dangerous folk in Bree, and one of them, a local named Bill Ferny, is already leaving the inn to spread word of what he has seen. Even the innkeeper, Barlaman Butterbur, grows nervous, realizing he has been holding a letter meant for Frodo, one left by Gandalf long ago and only now remembered. The hobbits retire to their room unsettled, aware that their quiet journey has suddenly become much more perilous. The mysterious ranger known as Strider approaches Frodo and reveals that he knows both of the ring and of their intended journey to Rivendell. Though his rugged appearance and secretive manner unsettle the hobbits, Frodo senses that there is more to this wanderer than meets the eye. Strider may look rough, but there is something noble behind his weathered face. Their doubts vanish when Barlaman Butterbur, flustered and apologetic, rushes into the parlor carrying a long-delayed letter from Gandalf written months earlier and meant for Frodo. It explains that Gandalf has been delayed and confirms that Strider is a trusted friend. The letter also reveals Strider's true name, Aragorn, and includes a verse about him. All that is gold does not glitter, not all those who wander are lost. When Aragorn repeats the same lines from memory and shows the broken sword he carries, the heirloom of Elendil, the blade that once cut the ring from Sauron's hand, the hobbits finally understand that this is no mere vagabond. He is the heir of Isildur, descended from the kings of old, though he carries himself with humility rather than pride. Aragorn admits that his years living wild in the north have left him looking harsh and unkempt, which causes most to distrust him. But the strength in his eyes and the wisdom in his words soon earned Frodo's confidence. He warns that the Black Riders have likely entered Bree and that Gandalf's delay may be connected to them. Trusting Aragorn's judgment, the hobbits decide not to return to their rooms that night. When Merry burst in to report dark figures lurking in the streets, Aragorn quickly arranges their escape, setting decoys in the beds to mislead their pursuers. The companions pass the night in uneasy watchfulness, preparing to leave Bree at first light under Aragorn's protection. That same night, the Black Riders strike twice. First in Crickhollow, where they break into Frodo's abandoned house and terrify Fatty Bolger, and again at the Prancing Pony, where they find only empty beds. Realizing the ring is gone, the riders vanish into the shadows to renew their hunt. At dawn, Aragorn and the hobbits discover their ponies have been stolen from the inn's stable. Forced to buy the only remaining pony from the unscrupulous Bill Ferny, they leave Bree with little trust in the villagers, and a sense that the enemy's spies are everywhere. Despite its thin frame and shabby coat, the pony, also named Bill, proves eager to follow them, happy to leave its cruel master behind. Their road leads them toward the ancient hill of Weathertop, a landmark once used as a beacon by the kings of old. Aragorn hopes to find signs of Gandalf there. Along the way, they pass through the damp Midgewater marshes, enduring swarms of insects and long days of weary travel. To lift their spirits, Aragorn tells them of Gil-galad, the last High King of the Elves, and of Beren and Luthien, the mortal man and elven maiden whose love defied the darkness of the world. When they reach Weathertop, they find a stone marked with Gandalf's secret rune, proof that he has been there and left a warning. From the summit, they glimpse black figures moving far below. As night falls, Aragorn lights a small fire for protection, explaining that fire is one of the few things the riders fear. But their safety is short-lived. As shadows gather, the riders appear, advancing silently up the hill. A terrible compulsion comes over Frodo, and he slips on the ring. In the twilight world beyond sight, he beholds them as they truly are, pale and deathly, wearing crowns and wielding blades of darkness. The chief among them, the Witch King, strikes Frodo with a poisoned knife, The hobbit cries out and collapses, clutching his wounded shoulder as the world fades to black. When Frodo awakens, the Black Riders are gone, but the pain from his wound burns cold and deep. Aragorn tends to him with healing herbs, yet the injury is more than a simple cut. It is a wound of dark enchantment, and its poison is working its way toward Frodo's heart. The group presses onward, knowing that only the healing of Rivendell can save him. Following Aragorn's lead, they move carefully but swiftly across the wild, keeping near the road. Along the way, they come upon a familiar landmark, the troll cave that Bilbo and Gandalf discovered decades earlier. Inside, the petrified trolls still stand as stone, and Sam recites a playful poem he has written about them. His humor lifts the company's spirits, and Frodo praises him for his courage and wit, joking that Sam may yet prove to be a wizard or a warrior before their journey's end. Their path soon brings them to the edge of the Bruinen River, but before they can reach it, they encounter Glorfindel, a radiant elf lord of Rivendell sent by Elrond to find them. He confirms that the Black Riders are close, 5 following behind, 4 lying in wait ahead. Without delay, he places Frodo on his great white horse, urging him to ride for the ford while the others follow as best they can. Frodo hesitates to leave his friends, but Glorfindel insists. The riders seek only him and the ring. The sound of pursuit grows louder as all 9 Nazgul give chase. The dark power of the ring calls to Frodo, commanding him to stop, but he forces himself forward and crosses the river just as the riders close in. As they reach the shallows, the waters of the Bruinen surge to life, rising into a foaming flood shaped like galloping white horses. The torrent sweeps 3 of the riders away, while the rest are engulfed in light. Before Frodo faints, he glimpses a brilliant flash on the opposite bank, the last thing he sees before darkness claims him. Frodo awakens in the house of Elrond in the Valley of Rivendell, surrounded by light and calm. Gandalf is at his side and tells him that he came within hours of succumbing to the Wraith world. For 17 days, a splinter from the Ring-Wraith's blade had remained lodged near his heart. Its poison meant to draw his spirit into shadow. Through Elrond's healing, the shard was removed, though Gandalf still notices a faint transparency about Frodo, a mark left by his ordeal. In celebration of their arrival, Elrond hosts a great feast. Frodo sits among the elves, men, and dwarves, and speaks with Glóin, one of the companions from Bilbo's old adventure. Glóin hints at unrest in the dwarf realms, but says little more for the time being. Later, Frodo is joyfully reunited with Bilbo, who has lived peacefully in Rivendell since leaving the Shire. Bilbo continues to write his book, compose songs, and enjoy the company of his old friend Aragorn, whom Frodo now realizes is far more than a wandering ranger. During the banquet, Frodo notices Aragorn seated beside Arwen, Elrond's daughter, radiant and half-elven. The bond between them hints at both love and sorrow, for Arwen has chosen a mortal life to share Aragorn's fate. Later that night, Bilbo asks to see the ring. Frodo reluctantly reveals it, now hanging from a chain around his neck. When Bilbo reaches toward it, a dark change comes over his face. His features seem to twist into something thin and hungry. Frodo recoils, fighting the sudden urge to strike him. The shadow passes, and Bilbo, horrified at himself, apologizes. Peace returns between them, and the two spend the rest of the night talking softly about the stars and the songs of the elves. The next morning, a great council is held in Elrond's hall. Representatives of elves, dwarves, and men, along with Gandalf and the hobbits, have all arrived in Rivendell, each by chance, yet clearly drawn by fate. Glóin speaks first, describing how Sauron's messengers have threatened the dwarf kingdom and the men of Dale with war if they do not help locate a certain ring. He also tells of Balin, who years earlier led a company to reclaim the ancient mines of Moria, and from whom no word has since come. Elrond then recounts the history of the Second Age, when Sauron forged the One Ring in secret and deceived the elves. He remembers the great alliance of elves and men that defeated Sauron long ago, though Isildur's failure to destroy the ring ensured that evil endured. Boromir, the son of the Steward of Gondor, stands and tells of his homeland's long struggle to hold back Sauron's forces in the east. He has come north seeking answers to a prophetic dream that urged him to find the sword that was broken, and the halfling who shall stand forth. Aragorn reveals himself as the heir of Isildur, and presents the reforged shards of Narsil, the ancient sword of Elendil. Elrond confirms his lineage, and declares that Aragorn's destiny was bound to the fate of men. Gandalf then recounts his own trials, how he confirmed the ring's identity and was betrayed by Saruman the White, who sought to join Sauron and seize the ring for himself, Gandalf's imprisonment in Isengard, and his daring rescue by the great eagle Gwaihir reveal how dire the situation has become. Legolas of Mirkwood adds that Gollum, once held prisoner by the elves, has escaped during an orc raid, and that the enemy's power now spreads far beyond Mordor. The council debates what must be done. Some propose wielding the ring against Sauron. Others suggest hiding it or entrusting it to Tom Bombadil. But Elrond and Gandalf insist that the ring's corruption is absolute. It cannot be used without destroying its bearer. The only path is to carry it into Mordor and cast it into the fire where it was forged. Silence falls as the weight of this choice settles on all. Then Frodo, speaking quietly, offers himself for the task, though he admits he does not know the way Elrond accepts his decision, moved by his courage. And when Sam rushes forward declaring that Frodo will not go without him, Elrond smiles and grants his wish. Weeks pass as Elrond's scouts confirm that the Black Riders, though defeated at the ford, have survived in shadow and retreated to Mordor. Knowing they will soon return, Elrond chooses to form a company to oppose them, 9 walkers to balance the 9 servants of the enemy. The Fellowship of the Ring is chosen. Frodo and Sam, Gandalf, Aragorn, Boromir, Legolas, Gimli, Merry, and Pippin. Aragorn's sword is reforged and renamed Andúril, Flame of the West. A symbol of the kingship he has yet to claim, Elrond binds none of them by oath, saying that true loyalty comes from free will, not from swearing. At Gandalf's urging, Merry and Pippin are permitted to go despite their youth, for their friendship may prove stronger than wisdom. Before they depart, Bilbo gives Frodo 2 gifts from his own adventure: the sword sting and a coat of mithril mail, a treasure beyond measure forged by dwarves in ages past. Each member carries only what they can bear, though Sam packs a few comforts from home, his pots, salt, and pipeweed, and leads their faithful pony Bill along the road. Setting out from Rivendell, the Fellowship travels east into the wild. Their first challenge comes swiftly as they attempt to cross the misty mountains by the Redhorn Pass. A fierce blizzard strikes without warning, burying them in snow and forcing them to turn back. Boromir suspects the storm is the work of Sauron, but Aragorn and Gimli believe that the mountains themselves, ancient and proud, resist the passage of intruders, shoulder to shoulder. Boromir and Aragorn carve a path through the drifts, carrying the hobbits to safety as the Fellowship struggles onward toward the next stage of their perilous quest. With the Redhorn Pass blocked by snow and storm, the Fellowship faces a grim choice. Gandalf proposes that they go under the mountains. Through the ancient dwarven mines of Moria, only Gimli welcomes the idea. Boromir protests, calling it folly to enter a tomb. Gandalf warns that the southern route is far more dangerous, for Saruman's spies and servants fill the lands below. Their debate is cut short when a pack of wolves attacks in the night. The Fellowship drives them off, but the threat seals their decision. They must take the road through Moria. At the foot of the cliffs, they find the dark waters of a still lake, and beyond it, the west gate of Moria. The stone doors are smooth and sealed, and though Gandalf recalls the ancient friendship between elves and dwarves, he cannot remember the password that will open them. The company waits as tempers fray. Legolas and Gimli trade blame for the estrangement of their peoples, and Boromir, frustrated, hurls a stone into the water. The ripples spread silently across the lake. Then Gandalf understands the riddle. The doors open to the Elvish word for friend. As they pass through, a great tentacle bursts from the water and seizes Frodo. Sam leaps forward, slashing at the creature's pale arm until it retreats. The Fellowship rushes into the mine just as the monster's limbs crash against the gates, sealing them inside forever. Sam weeps for Bill, the pony, left behind at the entrance, his loyal friend now lost to the wild. In the black halls of Moria, the Fellowship moves by the pale glow of Gandalf's staff. The vast emptiness around them feels alive with echoes. Frodo's wound burns faintly, and his sharpened senses detect footsteps following them in the dark, though no one else hears them. Unknown to the others, Gollum has begun to trail them through the endless tunnels. They pause to rest, and Pippin, curious, drops a stone down a deep well. The faint plunk of water is followed by distant tapping. Soft, deliberate, and far below Gandalf scolds him harshly, for they may not be alone. Gimli then sings the Song of Durin, honoring the dwarves' lost kingdom, and its founder Gandalf explains that Mithril, the silver metal of legend, was mined here, but in their greed the dwarves delved too deep, and awakened a terror from the dark, Durin's bane. The Fellowship presses onward until they find the chamber of Mazarbul. There, they discover Balin's tomb, and beside it, a tattered record of his failed attempt to reclaim Moria. The last words read only, "They are coming." In the cold light of Gandalf's staff, the Fellowship reads the final entries of Balin's book. It tells of triumph and ruin, how the dwarves reclaim Moria for a short time before being overrun by orcs and slain to the last. As Gandalf closes the book, a faint drumming begins deep in the earth. The drums grow louder, orcs swarm the halls. Frodo's sword, Sting, and Gandalf's blade, Glamdring, flare blue with warning. The Fellowship fights furiously, their blades ringing in the shadows. Frodo is struck down, but the blow glances off the hidden mithril shirt Bilbo gave him, saving his life. They retreat toward the upper halls as arrows whistle through the dark. Gandalf lingers at a door to hold off something unseen, muttering a spell of sealing. The door bursts apart in fire, and a shadow moves beyond it. Weary but unbroken, Gandalf drives it back and follows the others toward the great bridge. The air fills with the sound of drums and horns as they reach the bridge of Khazad-dûm, a narrow span suspended over a chasm of fire. Then the true enemy appears. Out of the flame strides a creature of ancient malice, the Balrog of Morgoth, wreathed in darkness and fire, bearing a blade of flame and a whip of lightning. Gandalf turns at the bridge's center, facing it alone. The others flee across as the demon advances. The wizard raises his staff and commands the Balrog to go no further. The creature lashes out, and Gandalf's sword shatters in the clash. With his last strength, Gandalf strikes the bridge, breaking the stone beneath the Balrog's feet. The monster plunges into the abyss, but as it falls, its whip coils upward and catches Gandalf's legs. He looks to his companions one final time. His last words echo through the cavern. "Fly, you fools." Then he is pulled into the depths, vanishing into shadow. Stunned by Gandalf's fall, the Fellowship flees from the gates of Moria into the cold daylight beyond. At Gimli's request, they pause beside the Mirror, the sacred lake of the dwarves, where Durin first saw the stars reflected in stone. The still beauty of the place silences them all, and even Sam is moved to tears. They press on in grief toward the golden wood of Lothlorien, where Legolas hopes they may find rest among his kin. But Boromir hesitates. Wary of the enchanted forest, Aragorn rebukes him, saying that only those who carry evil in their hearts should fear to enter. As they walk beneath the golden Malern trees, Frodo senses eyes watching from the shadows. Legolas sings softly of Nimrodel, the ancient elf maiden who vanished into the woods long ago. Soon after, the company is met by Haldir, a warden of Lothlorien, who agrees to guide them to Caras Galadon. But he insists that Gimli must be blindfolded, for the dwarves are not trusted in this land. Aragorn refuses to allow any one of them to be singled out and commands that they all be blindfolded instead. As they travel, Haldir laments that the world is fading and that even the elves will soon pass over the sea. Yet he tells Merry that goodness still endures in Middle-earth, though sorrow will always walk beside it. That night, the Fellowship sleeps high among the trees on the elves' platforms. For the first time in many days, they rest in peace, though their hearts remain heavy with loss. The next morning, the blindfolds are removed at Seren Amroth, the heart of Lorien. The mound is crowned with white and golden trees, their leaves shimmering in eternal spring. The hobbits feel as though they have stepped into a song made real. At last, the Fellowship reaches Caras Galadhon, the city of the elves, high among the branches of silver and gold. There they meet Celeborn and Galadriel, Lord and Lady of the Golden Wood, who greet them with grave kindness. Celeborn mourns Gandalf's death, and at first lays blame upon the dwarves for awakening the Balrog, but Galadriel gently intervenes. She speaks words of understanding to Gimli and honors the memory of his kin. Her compassion melts his sorrow, and for the first time in his life, a dwarf looks upon an elf with love rather than suspicion. Galadriel warns the Fellowship that their quest stands on the edge of a knife. One misstep could lead to ruin, yet hope remains if they stay true. Her gaze seems to pierce each of their hearts, and afterward they confess that she tested them silently, offering each a vision of what they most desired. None will speak of what they saw, though Sam admits he was shown the Shire in peril, green fields burned and torn. Boromir claims to have resisted her test, though his words betray unease. In the days that follow, Frodo composes a lament for Gandalf, and one night he and Sam are invited to Galadriel's garden. There stands a silver basin filled with still water, the mirror of Galadriel. She bids them look if they wish, warning that the visions it shows may be of the past, present, or things yet to come. Sam gazes first and sees the Shire despoiled, the land he loves in ashes. He trembles, longing to return, but gathers his courage and resolves to continue with Frodo. When Frodo looks into the mirror, he sees shifting images, Gandalf in shining white, a fleet of dark ships, and at last a great eye rimmed with fire. Sauron's eye, searching for him. The sight burns his heart, and he nearly reaches for the ring. Galadriel stops him, and reveals that her realm is protected not only by elven skill, but by the power of one of the three rings. The Ring of Adamant, Ninya, which she wears openly before him. Only another ring bearer can see it. When Frodo offers her the one ring, she momentarily transforms. Terrible and radiant, beautiful beyond endurance. But she lowers her hand and smiles softly, having conquered the temptation. She tells him that if the ring is destroyed, her own power will fade and her people will pass into the west. In that moment, Frodo understands that even the greatest must face loss. Galadriel assures him that he has already shown courage greater than most. And Sam, who sees no ring at all, can only marvel at her grace under the golden boughs of Lothlorien. The Fellowship rests and heals, but the shadow of the east still calls them onward. Celeborn offers sanctuary to any who would remain, but Galadriel confirms the Fellowship's resolve to move on. For Boromir, forward means Minas Tirith. He is determined to return and defend his people. Aragorn still weighs two roads, turn south with Boromir toward Gondor, or keep east with Frodo toward Mordor, and is grateful when Celeborn presents riverboats for the Anduin, buying him days to decide. The elves equip the company for the long descent, limbos that sustains with a single bite, cloaks that blend with stone and leaf, and, to Sam's joy, lengths of elven rope he'd regretted not packing in Rivendell. At the parting feast, Celeborn warns them away from Fangorn's shadowed eaves. Boromir scoffs at the old tales, and Celeborn reminds him that such tales exist to caution the wise Frodo. Watching Boromir's face, senses a new hunger stirring behind his eyes. Galadriel bestows gifts, a sheath for Aragorn's reforged sword, and a green elfstone brooch from Arwen, a great bow for Legolas, silver belts for Merry and Pippin. A golden belt for Boromir. Sam receives a small wooden box of blessed soil and a single seed, G for Galadriel and for Garden. Gimli asks for nothing, claiming that merely beholding the lady is gift enough. Pressed, he requests a strand of her hair and is given 3, which he vows to set in crystal as a pledge of friendship between elf and dwarf. For Frodo, Galadriel offers a crystal phial filled with the light of Arundel's star, light to carry into the dark songs rise in Elvish as the boats push off. Legolas and Gimli share a craft, already fast friends. They slip south on the Anduin under uneasy skies, traveling by night to avoid unfriendly eyes. Sam keeps seeing glints in the water and wonders if his mind plays tricks. Frodo confides that something has followed them since Moria. Aragorn has tracked it too, Gollum, clinging to the boats like a shadow, a risk that could betray them to the enemy. The river hardens into rapids and knife-edged rocks. Aragorn admits the current has carried them farther than he intended. Arrows hiss from the banks, but their gray elven boats and cloaks turn them to river ghosts. The shafts pass harmlessly by, a vast black shape beats across the moon. Some winged watcher of the enemy, and Legolas brings it down with a single shot. Time itself feels strange after Lorien. Only when Aragorn notes the turn of season do they realize a month has slipped past, winter giving way to a frail spring. Boromir presses to abandon the boats and strike overland to Minas Tirith. Aragorn counters that they should bear the boats over the portage and take the ancient way past Aman. Then Boromir bristles, declaring he'll go to Gondor with or without them, then tempers his words, insisting he won't forsake friends. Gimli ends the quibbling by reminding the man of Gondor that a dwarf can carry twice the burden he imagines. They shoulder the crafts over rough ground and return to the water. Between towering cliffs, the river narrows, and there stand the Argonath, the pillars of the kings, immense stone sentinels that once marked Gondor's northern reach. The Fellowship's eyes drop in awe and fear. But Aragorn sits tall, guiding them beneath the stern gaze of his forefathers, Isildur and Anarion, toward lands where Gondor's glory has waned. On the western shore they make camp, and with Gandalf gone, Aragorn turns the choice to the ring bearer. 3 roads lie before them: march to war in Gondor, turn east into Mordor's shadow, or scatter and follow separate callings. The weight is crushing. Frodo asks for an hour alone to decide, and slips away into the woods. Boromir follows, offering counsel that quickly turns to insistence. He argues that the ring could be wielded for good, that strength could shield the innocent if only someone bold enough would claim it. His vision swells, walls strengthen, weapons multiplied, a kingdom renewed, and his restraint snaps. He lunges. Frodo vanishes as the ring slides onto his finger and flees unseen. Boromir stumbles, horror dawning as the madness drains from him. Alone, Frodo glimpses ruin in the ring's gaze, Sauron's eye searching, and, with a surge of will, tears it from his hand. He understands now. To protect his friends, he must go alone. Back at camp, the others debate. They will not abandon Frodo to the east, yet splitting the company might be wiser than marching as one. When Boromir returns, he admits anger and failure to persuade, but hides the truth of his outburst and claims Frodo simply disappeared. Sam's heart rejects the story at once. He sprints for the shore and spies a boat drifting by itself. Knowing Frodo rides it unseen, Sam flings himself into the river and nearly drowns. Frodo hauls him aboard, and in the shock of that rescue, both accept what was always true. They are meant to make this road together. They hide their boat and set their feet toward Emon Muil, 2 small hobbits, moving into the broken hills in the land of shadow beyond, while behind them, the Fellowship begins to fracture into fates of its own. This is the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, Book 1 of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Book 2, The Two Towers. The Fellowship is broken. Friends are scattered across a war-torn land. While darkness spreads from Mordor, 2 hobbits press on toward doom, and the hope of the world hangs by a thread. This is the summary of The Two Towers, Book 2 of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Let us begin. Aragorn climbs the slopes of Amon Hen beside the great river Anduin, following Frodo's trail. He finds that the hobbit had run to the high seat atop the hill, a place from which one could see far across Middle-earth. Seeing no sign of him, Aragorn pauses, then hears the unmistakable sound of a horn echoing through the trees. It is Boromir's horn, calling for aid. Racing through the woods, Aragorn arrives too late. Boromir lies mortally wounded, pierced by many arrows. Surrounded by the bodies of slain orcs, with his final breaths, Boromir confesses that the orcs have taken the hobbits, and that he tried to seize the ring from Frodo. But failed, Aragorn grieves deeply as Boromir dies in his arms. Moments later, Legolas and Gimli arrive, lamenting that they too came too late to help. Together, the 3 honor their fallen companion. They prepare a solemn funeral, placing Boromir in one of their boats and setting it adrift over the great falls of Rauros. Aragorn and Legolas sing a lament for the son of Gondor, whose courage was great, though his heart was tested by temptation. Afterward, Aragorn notices one of the remaining boats is missing, and that Sam's pack is gone. He realizes that Frodo has set off alone toward Mordor, and that Sam has followed him. He keeps Boromir's corruption a secret, preserving the man's honor in death. With their fellowship broken, Aragorn decides that their duty lies with Merry and Pippin, who have been taken by the orcs. Though he longs to follow Frodo, he cannot abandon the others to torment or death. With that, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli begin their pursuit, following the clear trail of trampled grass left by the orcs as they race across the land. The 3 companions run tirelessly through the night and day, finding scattered orc bodies along the trail, signs of a quarrel between the servants of Isengard and Mordor. Among the tracks, they discover a small elven brooch, recognizing it as one of Pippin's from Lothlorien. It is a hopeful sign that at least one hobbit still lives. The pursuit leads them into the vast, open grasslands of Rohan. From afar, Legolas's keen eyes spot the orcs' fading trail. After 4 days of relentless running, Aragorn hears the thunder of hooves, and soon a company of riders appears on the horizon. They are the Rohirrim, the horse lords of Rohan. Their leader, Eomer, son of Eomund, approaches warily but listens to Aragorn's plea. He reports that his men have slain an entire host of orcs, but found no sign of any halflings among the dead. When Aragorn reveals his true identity as the heir of Gondor, Eomer is astonished, but senses truth in his words. He speaks of dark times, of Saruman's treachery, orc raids, and a kingdom strained by shadow. When Aragorn tells him that Gandalf has fallen, Eomer's heart sinks. Still, he offers his trust, lending them horses to continue their search and warning them of Saruman's growing power. As night falls, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli make camp at the edge of Fangorn Forest. The air is heavy and ancient, and the trees seem almost alive. Aragorn warns against cutting living wood, for this forest is older than men's memory. Late in the night, a mysterious old man in a cloak appears at their camp, and their horses panic and flee. Gimli fears it was Saruman, though Aragorn is uncertain. Whatever the truth, they stand now at the threshold of Fangorn, without mounts and with danger closing in. Pippin awakens bound and bruised, remembering the chaos of battle, the flight through the woods, Boromir's desperate defense, and the flash of arrows before darkness took him. Merry lies nearby, unconscious and bleeding from the head. Listening carefully, Pippin realizes that their captors are divided. Some are the Uruk-hai of Isengard, fierce and disciplined under their leader, Ugluk. Others are orcs of Mordor, commanded by Grishnak, who obeys the will of the Nazgul. The two groups argue bitterly over what to do with the hobbits. Saruman demands they be brought to Isengard alive, while Mordor's servants wish to take them east. When the orcs are distracted, Pippin loosens his bonds, pretending to still be tied. The march is brutal. They are forced to run by day and night, sustained only by a foul orcish drink that restores their strength. Merry regains consciousness and encourages Pippin to endure. In a misty stretch of land, Pippin drops his elven brooch as a signal, hoping their friends might find it. Soon after, the riders of Rohan spot the orc host and begin to hunt them across the plains. The Uruk-hai drive their captives onward through the night, but as dawn breaks, the riders encircle them. Amid the confusion, Grishnak sneaks toward the hobbits, believing they carry the One Ring. Thinking quickly, Pippin mimics Gollum's voice, tricking the orc into seizing them. Just as Grishnak prepares to strike, an arrow from the Rohirrim kills him instantly. In the chaos that follows, the hobbits escape their bonds, eat limbus to regain strength, and flee toward the forest. Behind them, Eomer's riders destroy the last of the orcs. Merry and Pippin vanish into the dark embrace of Fangorn, unseen by friend or foe alike. Within the ancient woods of Fangorn, Merry and Pippin rest beside a stream, drinking the clear water and counting their supplies. They have only a few days' worth of food and no clear sense of direction. The forest feels ancient and alive, strange and shadowed, but not evil. Climbing a hill for a better view, they are suddenly lifted high into the air by a vast creature of bark and leaf. Towering 14 feet tall, with deep-set eyes and skin like old wood, he introduces himself as Treebeard, or Fangorn, an Ent, one of the oldest beings in Middle-earth, shepherds of the trees who walk and speak like men. Treebeard has never seen hobbits before, but hearing of their journey and friendship with Gandalf, he decides they are no enemies. He carries them to his home, a great hollow among living trees where cool water flows and light filters through the leaves. There, the hobbits tell their tale, though they conceal the secret of the ring. Treebeard listens gravely and laments Saruman's treachery. The wizard, once his friend, now cuts down the forest to feed the fires of Isengard. The Ent speaks of ages past, of the lost Entwives who tended gardens and fields, now vanished beyond finding. Without them, the Ents have grown fewer and slower, some becoming trees themselves. After a night's rest and draughts that fill them with strength, Treebeard carries Merry and Pippin to a gathering, the Entmoot, where the ancient shepherds of the forest will decide their course. The Entish tongue is long and deliberate, and the council lasts 3 days. At last, the Ents rise to anger. The forest itself seems to awaken as Treebeard leads his kin to war against Isengard. Though he knows it may be their end, Treebeard declares it is better to fall defending what they love than to wither in silence. The hobbits ride upon his shoulders as the march of the Ents begins, the oldest power in Middle-earth stirring once more. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli follow the tracks of the hobbits into the ancient woods of Fangorn. Aragorn studies the ground and deduces that both Merry and Pippin escaped captivity and fled along the stream after being carried by orcs. When they reach the hill where the hobbits once met Treebeard, Legolas spies an old man moving among the trees. Gimli fears it is Saruman and urges Legolas to shoot, but the elf refuses to strike without warning. The old man steps from the shadows and greets them calmly, his voice strong, yet ageless. Before they can act, a strange stillness falls upon them. They are unable to lift their weapons. Then, the man casts off his gray cloak. Beneath it stands Gandalf, alive, radiant, and clad in white. The companions are astonished. Gandalf explains that he fell in battle with the Balrog and passed through fire and shadow, dying upon the mountain peak, but his task was not yet finished. Sent back by the Valar, he awoke upon the mountain, where Gwaihir, the Wind Lord, carried him to safety at the bidding of Galadriel. He tells them that fortune now turns in their favor. Sauron believes the ring is being taken toward Gondor, not Mordor, and thus his eye is turned westward. Saruman, desiring the ring for himself, has unknowingly thwarted his own master's designs. Merry and Pippin, Gandalf reveals, are safe among the Ents, whose wrath against Isengard has begun to stir. He commands the three to abandon their search and ride with him instead to Edoras, capital of Rohan. There, King Theoden lies under a dark influence, and his people's fate will soon decide the war. Gandalf summons Shadowfax, the lord of all horses, who arrives leading the steeds once given by Eomer. The mystery of the vanished mounts is solved. Saruman's presence had been felt, but it was Shadowfax who spirited them to safety. With renewed strength and purpose, Gandalf the White rides forth once more across the plains of Rohan, with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli at his side. The four riders approach Edoras, the hill city of the Rohirrim. In the morning light, the thatched roof of the great hall Medusoed glows like burnished gold. Yet when they reach the gates, they are met with suspicion. Theoden has forbidden strangers to enter, and the guards demand they surrender their weapons. Aragorn hesitates to part with Andúril, the reforged sword of his ancestors, but yields after the doorward Hama swears it will not be touched. Gandalf is allowed to keep his staff, claiming it as a walking aid for an old man. Inside the hall, King Theoden sits bent with age, his face pale and weary. By his side stands Grima Wormtongue, the king's pale counselor, whose words drip with deceit. Gandalf greets the king, but Theoden rebukes him coldly, accusing him of bringing only ill news. Wormtongue mocks the visitors, calling Gandalf a troublemaker who should have been cast out long ago. But Gandalf rises to his full height, casting light into the shadowed hall. He rebukes Wormtongue and speaks words of strength to Theoden. The king stirs, straightens, and his eyes clear of fog. Gandalf urges him to walk into the sunlight, and Theoden steps out beneath the sky, breathing deeply as though awakening from a long dream. His youth and vigor return, and he calls for his sword. Wormtongue pleads to remain behind to guard Edoras, but Gandalf exposes him as Saruman's spy and betrayer. Bought with promises of gold in Éowyn's hand, Theoden banishes him. Wormtongue spits at the king's feet and flees. Freed from corruption, Theoden rallies his people. He names Éomer his heir and appoints Éowyn to rule Edoras in his absence. The men gather their arms and ride forth to war, sunlight glinting on their mail as the king of Rohan rides once more. Theoden leads his riders toward Isengard, but soon learns that his western forces have been scattered. Their captain, Erkenbrand, retreats toward the ancient fortress of Helm's Deep. Gandalf counsels Theoden to withdraw there, warning that Saruman's armies are greater than he knows. Then, without explanation, Gandalf rides away on Shadowfax, promising he will return at dawn. Theoden and his small host reach Helm's Deep, a stone fortress set in the White Mountains. They find it unprepared for siege, its garrison filled with old men and boys. Yet they take courage and fortify what they can. As night falls, an immense army emerges from the valley. Uruk-hai, orcs, and wild men of Dunland, marching under the banner of the White Hand. Thunder rolls as the assault begins. Arrows fly, the outer wall is breached, and Aragorn and Éomer fight fiercely to hold the gate. Explosive fire from Isengard tears through the defenses, forcing the Rohirrim back to the Hornburg. Through the long night, Legolas and Gimli count their kills in jest to keep their courage high. When the walls crumble and defeat seems certain, Theoden refuses to die in hiding. As dawn approaches, he prepares to ride out and face the enemy head-on. The gates burst open, and the king of Rohan rides into battle, his sword gleaming in the rising sun. In that moment, Gandalf returns, leading Erkenbrand and 1,000 riders. The enemy wavers and turns to flee, only to find a forest, summoned by the Ents, now blocking their retreat. Trapped and terrified, Saruman's army vanishes into the shadows of the trees, never to be seen again. With the battle won, Gimli and Éomer emerge from the caves, bloodied but alive. Gimli boasts that he felled 42 enemies, narrowly besting Legolas's tally. Their friendly rivalry softens into laughter and relief. Gandalf urges Theoden to ride with him to Isengard. The king, still weary from battle, doubts they are ready for another fight, but Gandalf assures him there will be no war. Only reckoning. Theoden agrees, and the Rohirrim bury their dead before setting out. Their path leads through a new forest, strange and silent. The trees seem to watch them as they pass, filled with a brooding anger. Gandalf explains that these are horns, ancient tree spirits roused by the Ents to avenge the forest's destruction. Theoden marvels, realizing that the old songs of Rohan's past are true. Legolas and Gimli speak of friendship, Legolas longing to see the deep places of stone beneath the mountains, and Gimli vowing to one day walk among the living woods. Each promises to visit the other's realm when the war is done. As they near Isengard, they see devastation. The once green valley has been torn bare, its soil blackened by industry. Yet now it lies flooded and broken, the waters of the river Isen pooled around the tower of Orthanc. And there, amidst the ruin, two small hobbits sit laughing, smoking their pipes, and enjoying a fine meal. It is Merry and Pippin, alive, safe, and very comfortable. Gimli is astonished, torn between anger and joy. Merry explains that Treebeard now commands Isengard and wishes to meet the King Theoden. Amused and curious, looks upon the hobbits and says that indeed, the old tales spoke true. There's more to these small folk than meets the eye. The companions rest beside the flooded ring of Isengard, sharing food and pipeweed as Merry and Pippin recount their adventure. After Saruman's armies marched to war, the Ents rose up in fury. With roots and stone, they tore down the walls of Isengard, breaking machines and crushing towers. Orthanc alone stood untouched, its dark stone impervious to their wrath. Saruman unleashed liquid fire upon them, felling one of their kin. Enraged, Treebeard ordered the river to be diverted, flooding Isengard and trapping Saruman within his tower. The valley became a vast pool, its waters steaming with ruin. Later, Gandalf arrived and spoke with Treebeard, urging him to send the horns to aid Rohan at Helm's Deep. The mysterious forest that appeared during the battle was their doing. After Gandalf's departure, Wormtongue came to Isengard pretending to bear a message, but Treebeard saw through his lies and sent him to join Saruman in confinement. As the tale ends, Aragorn notes with concern that the hobbit's pipeweed comes from the Sheer. If Saruman possessed such goods, it means his reach, or that of his spies, extends farther than they feared. A shadow lingers even in victory, for the war for Middle-earth is far from over. Gandalf brings Theoden to the foot of Orthanc, warning that Saruman's greatest weapon is not sorcery, but speech. From a high balcony, the fallen wizard addresses them with a voice smooth as calm water. He offers counsel and peace, promising wisdom to repair what war has broken. For a moment, Theoden wavers, until Gimli bluntly reminds all present who first loosed war upon Rohan. Éomer cuts through the honeyed words as well, naming Saruman's defeat for what it is and denying him any pretense of authority. Saruman's mask slips, contempt flashes through the charm as he snarls at the rustics who defy him. Only then does Gandalf answer. He calls Saruman what he has become, servant to a darker will, and offers him one last chance to stand down and aid the West. Saruman refuses, trying instead to ensnare Gandalf as an equal partner in power. But the White Wizard is beyond his reach. With a word, Gandalf casts down Saruman's staff and strips him of rank and title. The Ents will keep him sealed within Orthanc. As the company withdraws, Wormtongue hurls a heavy, dark crystal from a window. It misses. Gandalf notes that even Wormtongue may not know whether he meant to strike Theoden or the master who ruined him. Pippin retrieves the glittering stone. Gandalf promptly takes it and orders. Orthanc watched and its caverns flooded as needed. Then the riders turned back toward the lands of Rohan. That night, while the others sleep, curiosity gnaws at Pippin. He creeps to Gandalf's bundle, swaps the strange orb for a common stone, and steals away to look. The crystal blooms with darkness and fire, then clamps onto his mind. Pippin falls, rigid and crying out. The camp erupts. Gandalf seizes the orb from Pippin's clutch and breaks the spell. Shaken and ashamed, Pippin explains. A will like a blazing eye questioned him. He admitted he was a hobbit. The eye assumed Saruman had taken the ring to Isengard. Gandalf, grim but relieved, judges that Sauron's arrogance spared them. He never thought to ask the right questions. The orb is a palantir, an ancient seeing stone used to speak across vast distances. It is perilous if the enemy holds the far end. Gandalf gives the stone into Aragorn's keeping and warns that it must be used, if at all, with resolve greater than fear. A winged Nazgul passes overhead, already speeding to Orthanc to verify Saruman's lies. Gandalf wastes no time. He mounts Shadowfax and carries Pippin south at a gallop toward Gondor, leaving the others to follow. Frodo and Sam pick their way through the jumbled ridges of the Amin Mule, a maze of stone that slows them to a crawl. A sheer drop blocks their path. Frodo attempts the descent, slips, and is saved only by a ledge and Sam's timely memory of the elven rope from Lorien. They climb down safely. When Sam tugs to free his line, the rope loosens, as if by its own goodwill. By moonlight, they take a meager rest, until Frodo spots a pale shape crawling down the cliff, clutching and skittering like a spider. Gollum has come at last. The hobbits spring their ambush, and after a brief struggle, subdue him. Frodo will not kill the wretched creature. Instead, he binds Gollum to an oath, sworn on the only thing that holds him: the ring itself. Gollum whines, writhes at the touch of elven rope, and finally submits. He claims to know a secret way toward Mordor and promises to guide them, his Smeagol self fawning, his Gollum self lurking just beneath. The three set out by night into the dead marshes. Gollum shuns the limbus and hunts for fish. Sam distrusts him and dozes through his own watch despite himself. Strange corpse lights bob over the water, leading to faces pale and drowned beneath the surface, echoes of an ancient battle among men, elves, and orcs. Whether the dead truly lie there or the lights only make it seem so, the result is the same. The place is haunted. The land grows fouler as they go. Frodo lags, the ring dragging at his neck and mind, the eye always at the edge of thought. A Nazgul on a flying beast sweeps overhead and vanishes into the east. At the marsh's end, they enter a blasted waste, the very doorstep of Mordor. Sam overhears Gollum arguing with himself. One voice cringes and clings to Frodo's kindness. The other whispers of a different path and a she who waits in the dark. Frodo presses on. Gollum, shivering with fear and desire, obeys. They reach the Morannon, the black gate of Mordor, clamped between grim watchtowers with mountains and orc holes hemming every approach. A great host from the east marches in as they watch. The gate yawns open and slams shut like iron jaws. Gollum begs them not to attempt the front entrance. Frodo refuses to abandon the quest, and Sam refuses to abandon Frodo. Cornered by reality, Gollum admits there is another way, a back route by Cirith Ungol, once held by Gondor and now fallen to shadow. There is a stair to a secret tunnel inside the mountains. Dangerous, yes, but not guarded like the gate. Frodo, stern at last, makes plain that the ring will not be returned to Gollum, and that its bearer could command him to his doom if need be. Terrified, Gollum capitulates. While they rest, another southern army tramps to the Morannon. Sam wonders if the legends of giant gray beasts might be true. When night comes, Frodo chooses. They will try the hidden path. Gollum leads them away from the teeth of the gate and toward the darker pass that waits. Gollum leads Frodo and Sam southward, skirting the jagged mountains that guard Mordor. They enter the fairer lands of Ithilien, once part of Gondor, now a silent frontier watched by no men. The air smells of thyme and bay. Flowers bloom between ruined stones. For the first time in weeks, the hobbits breathe easily. Gollum, however, mutters that he hates the smell of growing things. While Frodo sleeps, Sam's hunger for real food overtakes him. He coaxes Gollum into catching something nice and fresh. Soon Gollum returns with 2 rabbits, which Sam cleans and stews with wild herbs. The smell of cooking drifts through the air, warm and homely, yet dangerous. Gollum sulks at the sight, declaring that good meat should be eaten raw. When Frodo wakes, he and Sam share the stew gratefully, until Sam realizes with dread that the smoke has risen high above the trees. Moments later, armed men step from the brush, rangers in green and brown, silent as shadows. They are no servants of Sauron, but soldiers of Gondor, led by a captain named Faramir. He questions the hobbits, then leaves to ambush a passing host of Haradrim, southern men allied with the Dark Lord. From hiding, Sam witnesses the skirmish and sees one of the great Oliphants of legend stride into battle like a moving hill. When the fight ends, the creature lies dead, and Sam feels a pang of pity for both beast and man. War between the free peoples, he thinks, should never have been. After the battle, Faramir speaks with Frodo, learning that they once traveled with a man named Boromir. When Frodo confirms Boromir's death, Faramir reveals that he was his brother. The news strikes him hard, though he hides it behind courtesy. Frodo is wary, remembering Boromir's fall to temptation, and fears this captain may share the same pride Sam, indignant at the questioning, blurts out in Frodo's defense. which makes Faramir smile faintly. Faramir invites them to his hidden refuge, Henneth Anun, the window on the west. Blindfolded to preserve its secrecy, Frodo and Sam are led through the forest and behind a waterfall into a grotto filled with the murmuring sound of water and the glow of lanterns. There, they are fed and allowed to rest. Later, Faramir speaks quietly with Frodo. He explains that Gandalf, whom he calls Mithrandir, once told him of Isildur's Bane, a lost power that could ruin any who sought to wield it. He admits he has guessed what Frodo carries, but unlike Boromir, he has no desire for such a weapon. "I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway," he says, "not where Minas Tirith falling in ruin." Sam, flustered, accidentally confirms the truth of it by mentioning the ring outright, but Faramir keeps his word. He will neither claim it nor hinder their errand. In the deep of night, Faramir wakes Frodo and leads him out onto a ledge beside the roaring falls. Below, in the moonlit pool, something stirs. A crouched shape catching fish with long pale fingers. It is Gollum. Faramir's archers draw their bows, but Frodo pleads for the creature's life. He descends to the water's edge and calls softly. Gollum cringes, torn between fear and devotion. When Frodo invokes his authority as master of the precious, Gollum obeys, only to be seized by hidden guards. Frodo's heart sinks. It feels like betrayal, though he meant to save him. Brought before Faramir, Gollum squirms and hisses under questioning. At last he reveals the path he means to take, through the pass of Cirith Ungol, near the dread tower of Minas Morgul, where the Nazgul dwell. Faramir warns that such a road is filled with peril, yet Frodo remains steadfast. "There is no other way," he says. Faramir releases them at dawn. He spares Gollum on Frodo's word, and gives the hobbits provisions for the road. Before they part, he says quietly, "If ever we meet again, may it be in happier times." Then he watches as Frodo, Sam, and Gollum vanish into the shadows of the east. At dawn, Faramir bids farewell to Frodo, Sam, and Gollum beside the roaring falls of Henneth Anun. He gives the hobbits food and water for the road, but orders that Gollum be blindfolded as they depart, for his eyes are not to see the secret paths of Gondor. They set out through the fair woods of Ithilien, once green and peaceful, now darkened by the shadow spreading from Mordor. Faramir warns them not to drink from the tainted stream that flows from Minas Morgul, for even the waters there are poisoned by the enemy. As they travel eastward, the land grows heavy and silent. Flowers fade, trees turn gray, and the air feels thick with dread. During the night, Gollum slips away, only to return at dawn, whispering urgently that they must hurry. At last they come unto the crossroads where ancient roads once met, one leading north to Osgiliath, another east toward the Vale of the Dead City. On either side of the path stand the fallen statues of old Gondorian kings, their heads long ago struck off and replaced with crude stones painted with the red eye of Sauron. Yet, as the setting sun spills its final light upon them, Frodo sees a glimmer of hope. On one fallen head, flowers have taken root, forming a crown of white and gold. Even in ruin, beauty endures, and for a fleeting moment, Frodo believes that good will outlast the shadow. The travelers enter the Vale of Minas Morgul, a place where the very air seems sick with cold light. The fortress of the Nazgul gleams like a corpse in the dark, pale and dreadful. As they cross the bridge over the foul stream, Frodo feels an invisible pull urging him toward the gates, the ring growing hotter against his chest. Sam seizes his hand and breaks the spell, and together they stumble away from the light. Suddenly the gates open. An army issues forth, led by the Witch King himself, commander of the Nine. The ground shakes beneath their march toward Gondor. Frodo nearly succumbs, raising the ring halfway to his finger, but instead he clutches the phial of Galadriel, drawing strength from its light. When the host finally passes, silence returns, and Gollum leads them to the secret stair, an endless climb cut into the rock of the mountainside. Hour after hour they climb, resting only when Frodo's strength fails. In that quiet, Frodo and Sam speak softly of home, wondering if their tale will one day be told like the old stories they once heard by the fire, stories of ordinary folk who kept going when they could not turn back. Frodo smiles and tells Sam that if any part of their journey is remembered, Sam's courage will shine brightest. They fall asleep, and Gollum, returning from some errand, stands over them for a long moment. A flicker of pity stirs in his eyes, But when Sam wakes and speaks harshly, the moment dies. The creature hisses that they must move on, and his voice once again turns cold. Gollum leads them to the foot of a high, dark cliff and into a tunnel choked with stench and shadow. The air is thick and damp, the walls slick with webs. Before long, Gollum slips away into the darkness, leaving them alone. Frodo and Sam grope forward hand in hand until the blackness becomes unbearable. A sickly smell rises ahead, and something vast stirs in the gloom. Remembering Galadriel's gift, Sam urges Frodo to use it. The phial flares to life, shining with the light of Arundel's star. The tunnel shivers with movement, and from its depths comes Shelob, an ancient, monstrous spider, older than Sauron himself, bloated with malice and hunger. Her eyes glitter like oily moons as she advances, but the elven light burns her sight. Frodo, holding the phial aloft and sting drawn, drives her back. The hobbits flee through the winding passages until they meet a wall of thick silken web. Frodo hacks through with sting, and they burst out into the night air once more, gasping on the cliffs of Mordor. Their freedom is short-lived. From a hidden crevice, Shelob strikes. Frodo falls, tangled in her venomous sting. Sam leaps to defend him, but Gollum attacks from behind. Clawing and choking, Sam fights with desperate strength and hurls Gollum down, leaving him senseless on the stones. Then he turns to face Shelob. A shadow vast and glistening, he brandishes sting in the phial, calling out in defiance. When she rears to crush him, Sam ducks beneath her bulk, driving the blade deep into her belly. With a shriek that echoes through the mountains, Shelob retreats into her dark lair, wounded and defeated. When the silence returns, Sam runs to Frodo's side, but Frodo does not stir. His skin is pale and cold, his body limp. Sam cries out, believing his master dead. After long grief, he steels himself to go on alone. He takes Sting, the phial, and finally the ring, though it burns his heart to do so. "I'll see it through for both of us," he whispers. As Sam begins the lonely climb toward the tower above, he hears the sound of orcs. He slips on the ring and becomes unseen. Two captains, Shagrat and Gorbag, discover Frodo's body and argue over their find. Sam follows, horrified, as they drag Frodo away. Their words chill him. Shelob's sting is not death, but a poison that paralyzes its prey. Frodo is alive, captured, but alive. The orcs carry him into the watchtower of Cirith Ungol. Before Sam can reach the gate, the iron door slams shut. Alone in the black land, Sam stands outside the fortress, clutching Sting in the ring. Torn between fear and hope, he has made his choice. The quest must go on. This is the end of the Two Towers, Book 2 of The Lord of the Rings, and Book 3, The Return of the King. The hour of the Great War has come. The fate of Middle-earth will soon be decided. As armies gather and the shadow deepens, courage, friendship, and hope will be tested one final time. This is the summary of The Return of the King, the final book of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Let us begin. Part 1. The War of the Ring. Pippin rode with Gandalf upon Shadowfax through the darkening lands of Gondor. Fires burned upon the hills around them, beacons summoning allies to war. Sleepy and disoriented, Pippin barely grasped Gandalf's hurried words about the city they approached. At last they reached Minas Tirith, the White City, 7 tiers of gleaming stone crowned by a tower of silver and marble. Inside its walls, the air was heavy with dread. When Pippin accidentally spoke of Boromir's death, Gandalf silenced him sharply. Such news must come first to Denethor, Boromir's father and the steward of Gondor. In the court of the fountain stood a lifeless white tree, its branches barren beneath the shadowed sky. Denethor sat before it, proud and cold, holding the cloven horn of Boromir. He questioned Pippin at length, drawing from him the tale of Boromir's fall. Moved by the man's valor, Pippin offered his service to Denethor in repayment of his debt. Gandalf watched in silence, wary of the steward's piercing mind. Later, in their quarters, Gandalf warned Pippin that Denethor sought more than comfort. He sought knowledge. The old lord had long studied the affairs of men and kings, and Gandalf suspected he knew more of Aragorn than he revealed. Pippin was placed under the care of Baragond, a kindly soldier who taught him the ways of the city's guard. Together they watched the growing storm over Mordor Nazgul pass overhead, spreading fear wherever they flew, and far below, the beacons still burned, signals of desperation. As night fell, Gandalf paced restlessly, murmuring that dawn itself would soon be swallowed by darkness. Far away, Merry rode with King Theoden toward Helm's Deep, heavy with worry for his missing friends. There they were met by a company of Dunedain, rangers of the north led by Halbarad and joined by Elladan and Elrohir, the sons of Elrond. They brought a grave message. Elrond had foreseen that Aragorn must take the paths of the dead if Gondor were to be saved. That night Aragorn withdrew in thought, and when morning came, his eyes were hard with resolve. He confessed that he had looked into the Palantir and revealed himself to Sauron. The Dark Lord now knew the heir of Isildur lived, and would hasten his assault on Gondor. To answer this challenge, Aragorn chose the road through the haunted mountains, where the spirits of Oathbreakers lingered, bound by ancient curse. Éowyn begged to go with him, but he refused her plea. She spoke of the cage that awaited her, honor without glory, duty without deeds, but Aragorn would not yield. At dawn she stood in armor, silent as he rode away with Legolas, Gimli, and the Grey Company. Through darkness and fear they entered the paths of the dead, their torches flickering upon bones of long-forgotten kings. As they emerged into the cold air beyond, a host of shadowy forms followed, beneath the black clouds sent from Mordor. Aragorn called upon them at the Stone of Eric to fulfill their oath. The dead obeyed and fell in behind him, a silent army bound for war. Theoden's riders left Helm's Deep and journeyed toward Edoras, passing beneath brooding skies and over ancient lands marked by stone sentinels of forgotten peoples. In Dunharrow, Éowyn met them and told of Aragorn's departure through the paths of the dead. Theoden recalled the tale of Baldur, a prince who once vanished upon that cursed road, and he grieved for the fate of his friends. Soon after, a messenger from Gondor arrived bearing a red arrow, a plea for aid from Denethor. Theoden planned to gather his full host before marching, but the messenger warned that Minas Tirith would not stand so long. When the dawn came dim and colorless beneath the spreading shadow from the east, Theoden made his choice. He would ride swiftly with the riders he had, leaving the rest to follow when they could. He ordered Merry to remain behind, for his small pony could not endure the long ride. Heartbroken, Merry obeyed, until a mysterious rider named Dernhelm lifted him into the saddle and whispered that if his heart was true, he would not be left behind. Together they rode under the black sky toward the war that awaited them on the Pelennor. Darkness without dawn fell upon Minas Tirith. Gandalf and Pippin watched as the shadow from Mordor spread across the plains. Denethor, proud and restless, summoned Pippin to sing for him, but his heart was too heavy for music. The steward spoke often of doom, and Gandalf saw that despair had already taken hold. At last Faramir returned from Ithilien, pursued by the winged Nazgul. Gandalf's light drove them off, and the wounded men were brought into the city. When Denethor saw his son, he rejoiced briefly, until Faramir told him that Frodo and Sam had journeyed into Mordor by way of Cirith Ungol. Denethor's joy turned to fury. Believing that the ring should have been sent to him, he accused Faramir of betrayal and weakness, praising Boromir in death while scorning his living son. In wrath, he sent Faramir back to defend Osgiliath, knowing the task was hopeless. The next day, Pippin watched from the walls as the retreating soldiers fled across the Pelennor. The Nazgul, circling above Gandalf, rode out to save them, but Faramir was struck by a poisoned dart and carried back to the city, near death. The hosts of Mordor encircled Minas Tirith. Siege engines hurled fire and stone, the lower circles burned, and the air filled with ash. Denethor's mind broke under grief. Declaring that all hope was lost, he ordered a pyre built for himself and his wounded son. Pippin fled to find Gandalf. At that very moment, the gates of the city thundered beneath the blows of a monstrous ram called Grond. The gates burst, and upon his black steed, the Lord of the Nazgul rode in to face Gandalf. Just as their powers were set to clash, a rooster crowed in the silence, and beyond the walls came the clear, wild call of horns. The riders of Rohan had come at last, and dawn broke over the battlefield. Merry rode for days beside the silent rider called Dernhelm, hidden among the ranks of Rohan's host. The road ahead was blocked. Orcs had raised fortifications to halt any army from reaching Gondor. Merry felt small and powerless, wondering if he had made a grave mistake by joining a war far beyond his strength. Then, hope came from an unexpected quarter. Theoden parleyed with the wild men who haunted the forests. Their chieftain, Gun Burigun, a gnarled and ancient being like the Pukul men carved in stone, offered to guide them through forgotten mountain paths in exchange for freedom from the darkness that plagued his people. Trusting his word, Theoden led his riders through the secret woods. The wild men's hidden roads carried them unseen past the enemy's lines, until they emerged onto an overgrown stoneway. An ancient road of Gondor long lost to memory, the dark clouds that Sauron had sent now served to cloak their advance. At dawn, a change came. The wind turned, the clouds broke, and pale sunlight spilled across the plains. Theoden raised his sword, and with a cry that echoed through the hills, the riders of Rohan charged down upon the enemy. The orcs, caught unprepared, fell before the thunder of hooves and the horns of Rohan. The king's charge had begun. The battle spread like wildfire across the Pelennor. Theoden rode at the front, his golden shield gleaming in the dim light. But overhead the Lord of the Nazgul descended upon a monstrous winged beast. With a shriek it struck, killing Theoden's steed and casting both horse and rider to the ground. Dernhelm leapt between the fallen king and the dark creature. The Witch King laughed, proclaiming that no living man could hinder him. But the warrior cast aside helm and disguise, revealing herself to be Éowyn, daughter of kings. As the creature lunged, she struck its head from its shoulders, yet the Witch King turned his black mace upon her, breaking her arm and casting her down. At that moment, Merry, trembling and half forgotten in the chaos, crept behind the wraith and drove his sword into its leg. The blade, forged long ago to wound the servants of Mordor, struck true Éowyn Rose and drove her sword into the wraith's unseen face. With a scream that split the air, the Witch King vanished, leaving behind only his empty cloak. Merry found Theoden still alive but fading. The king blessed him and asked for Éomer, who came too late to hear his final words. Grief-stricken, Éomer discovered Éowyn lying motionless nearby and believed her dead. In a fury, he gathered the Rohirrim and led them once more into the fire of battle. When the corsair ships appeared upon the river, bearing black sails, all hope seemed lost. But as they drew near, a new banner flew from the mast. Aragorn's. From the ships came Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and the Dunedain, followed by the host of the dead. The tide turned. The enemies of Gondor fled or were slain, and the field was won. Within Minas Tirith, the battle's echoes reached even the high tombs of the city. Pippin, fearing for Faramir's life, sought Gandalf with desperate urgency. Denethor, overcome by madness and grief, had resolved to burn himself and his wounded son upon a funeral pyre. Gandalf and Pippin hastened to the tower. They found Baragon standing alone, defending the door to the tombs against Denethor's servants, who bore torches and oil. Inside, the steward stood beside Faramir's body, eyes wild and weary. He revealed the truth. He had looked into a palantir, seeking knowledge of the enemy, and what he saw had driven him to despair. Denethor believed all hope lost, that Gondor would fall, and that Gandalf sought to supplant him with another king. Gandalf pleaded with him to abandon this madness, to trust in life and in his son's strength. But Denethor, consumed by pride and fear, seized a torch and set himself aflame. He perished upon the pyre, clutching the palantir, and his screams faded into the roar of fire. Gandalf carried Faramir to the houses of healing, where the healers labored to save him. Then, from beyond the walls, a cry split the air. A terrible wail that rose and then fell into silence. The Witch King was gone, destroyed upon the field. For the first time in many days, a faint glimmer of hope returned to Gondor. Merry wandered through the streets of Minas Tirith in a daze, following the procession that bore the wounded and the dead. The grief of the battle weighed upon him like a fog, and he felt as though part of him had withered. It was Pippin who found him at last, pale and trembling, and led him to the houses of healing. There, Gandalf saw that Merry's arm had grown cold and gray, poisoned by the touch of the Nazgul. Within the houses worked Ioreth, an aged woman wise in herb lore. She told Gandalf of a rhyme from the old days, that the hands of the king are the hands of a healer. Many lay stricken with despair, growing weak and chill, and only a healing power beyond mortal craft could save them. Outside the gates, Aragorn waited, unwilling to enter until the steward's leave was given. But Gandalf summoned him, and Aragorn came quietly into the city beneath the cloak of night. He called for Ethelis, the herb of kings, though few believed it had virtue beyond its scent. Crushing the leaves in steaming water, he touched the brow of Faramir and called his name. The fragrance filled the room, fresh and clean as spring, and Faramir awoke, gazing with joy at the face of his king. Next, Aragorn turned to Éowyn. Her beauty was pale and still, and Gandalf whispered that her wound was deeper than the body, a sorrow born long before battle. When Eomer knelt beside her, their voices together called her back. Her eyes opened, and she was herself again. Last came Merry, weak but smiling faintly. With the breath of Athalas upon him, color returned to his cheeks, and soon he was sitting up, pipe in hand, as Pippin sat laughing beside him. Throughout the city, whispers spread that the true king had returned, and that life had come again to Gondor. But before dawn, Aragorn slipped quietly away, returning to his camp outside the walls, unwilling to take the throne until the final test was won. In the days that followed, Legolas and Gimli entered Minas Tirith seeking their friends. Gimli marveled at the stonework of the city, yet found fault in its finish, while Legolas mused that the race of men would outlast all others, for though they fall, they ever rise again. They found Merry and Pippin, and over food and laughter recounted their own strange journey, through the paths of the dead, across the river where the seabirds cried, and aboard the captured corsair ships that had borne them to victory. Soon, Gandalf gathered Aragorn, Eomer, and Prince Imrahil in council. He spoke plainly, no strength of arms could conquer Mordor. Victory could come only if the ring were destroyed. Their task now was to turn the eye of Sauron away from Frodo, to challenge the Dark Lord openly and draw out his fury. Aragorn agreed. They would march upon the Black Gate itself, not for conquest, but to buy a chance for the smallest hope that remained. The lords of Gondor and Rohan gave their consent. What remained of the West would ride against the darkness, a march not of victory, but of faith. The host of the West rode forth from Minas Tirith. Merry remained behind, his arm aching and his heart heavy, while Pippin rode among the captains of the king. Across the plains they journeyed, past the ruins of Osgiliath and onto the crossroads, where they set right the fallen statue of the old king and cast down the red-eyed stone. Before the Black Gate of Mordor, the captains of the West stood together. Aragorn the king, Gandalf the White, Eomer of Rohan, Prince Imrahil, and the small figure of Peregrine. Took beside them, Aragorn called for Sauron to come forth and surrender. Instead, the great iron doors groaned open, and out rode the mouth of Sauron, a tall, twisted man robed in black, whose face was hidden save for a cruel, mocking mouth. He spoke with the voice of authority, showing them Frodo's mithril shirt, his cloak, and his sword belt. The sight struck despair into every heart, and for a moment even Gandalf's face grew grave. The mouth of Sauron offered terms: surrender of all lands west of the Anduin, tribute to Mordor, and subjugation under a new lord in Isengard. But Gandalf's answer was silence, then fire. He cast away the false tokens and cried, "Begone, for your master shall soon be overthrown." With a roar, the armies of Mordor poured from the hills, trolls charged from the marshes, orcs swarmed from the rocks. The last battle began. Pippin fought beside Baragond until a great troll struck them down. Gathering his courage, Pippin drove his sword into the beast's neck before it fell upon him. As darkness closed over him, he heard a voice crying in the distance, "The eagles are coming!" And in that final fading moment, he thought of home and of Bilbo's stories told long ago beside the fire. Then all went still. Part 2. The Journey to Mount Doom. Sam awoke beneath the shadow of the dark tower, bruised and alone. The doors had slammed shut behind Shagrat and Gorbag, trapping Frodo within. To save his master, Sam crept around the fortress to find another way in. He slipped on the ring to avoid detection, hearing distant shouts and the clamor of orcs fighting one another. When he removed the ring, the vastness of Mordor spread before him. Far off rose Mount Doom, its red glow flickering like a wound in the world. For a moment, the ring whispered its promise, power enough to make the desolation bloom, to turn waste into garden. But Samwise Gamgee, the plain hobbit of the Shire, turned away from the dream. Love and loyalty proved stronger than desire. At the gate of the tower, two vulture-like statues barred his way with invisible force. Raising the phial of Galadriel, Sam cried out in Elvish, and the light pierced the darkness. A bell rang out, and he entered, heart hammering. Within he found silence and death. The orcs had slaughtered each other in their greed for plunder. He followed the sound of harsh voices to a stairway, where Shagrat searched for spoils. When Sam leapt forward with Sting, the terrified orc fled. Sam climbed the tower and, despairing, began to sing softly in the dark. The song drew an answering sound. An orc above, revealing a hidden trapdoor, Sam followed, cast the creature down, and burst into the upper chamber. There, naked and pale, lay Frodo. The hobbits stirred, wild-eyed and broken, believing their quest lost. But Sam knelt beside him and placed the ring in his hand. For a moment, madness flickered in Frodo's gaze. Suspicion and greed twisted his face. Then he mastered himself, whispering that Sam should not bear the burden any longer. They dressed in orc armor, though the weight of it crushed them, and crept toward the gate. Again the Watcher's unseen power blocked the way, until Sam raised the phial once more. The light flared, the spell broke, and from above came the cry of a Nazgul, diving through the smoke. The chase through Mordor had begun. The two hobbits hid beneath the cliffs of the Morgai, while the Nazgul passed overhead. The air stank of ash and dust. They had no food but crumbs of limbus, and their water was gone. Frodo stumbled often, his strength failing. The ring had become a weight of iron upon his neck. They crept through thorns and over jagged rocks, hiding from patrols and scouts. Once, when despair pressed hardest, Sam lifted his head and saw a single star burning through the fumes of Mordor. Its cold light filled him with peace, a small, unshakable reminder that beauty still endured beyond the reach of evil. They found a foul stream and drank, though the taste was bitter. The nights passed without rest, and Frodo's will began to fade. He could no longer see the Shire in his mind, nor recall sunlight or green fields. The ring consumed his every thought. One evening, Sam glimpsed movement in the dark, Gollum following once more, but there was no strength to confront him. The hobbits pressed on, forced at last onto a road where Sauron's armies marched, disguised in their stolen armor. They fell in among the ranks. Driven by whips, they stumbled onward until confusion broke out between two columns of orcs. Sam seized the moment, dragging Frodo away into the dust and shadow. The land ahead was dead and endless, and Frodo could scarcely crawl. They moved like ghosts across the ashen plain, the fiery mountain looming nearer with each step. Frodo grew weaker, his voice reduced to whispers. For 4 days they toiled under the red glow, resting only when they collapsed. At last, Sam knew they could not return. He cast aside his cooking gear and the few trinkets of home, keeping only Sting in the phial. The ring had hollowed Frodo. His eyes burned with its fire, and he seemed scarcely mortal, yet Sam would not leave him. When they reached the base of Mount Doom, Frodo could go no farther. Sam lifted him upon his back and began the climb. The fumes scorched his lungs, but he pressed on, step by step, until they came to a road that wound upward to a fiery fissure, the crack of doom. There, Gollum sprang upon them in madness and desperation. Frodo's voice rang out, commanding him to leave, and for a moment Sam saw Frodo shining with terrible power. The ring-bearer transformed into a figure of wrath and majesty. Gollum shrank away, and Frodo ran forward into the heart of the mountain. Sam followed and found him standing at the edge, trembling. Then Frodo turned, eyes blazing, and claimed the ring for himself. He vanished. In that instant, Sauron's eye wheeled toward Mount Doom, and the earth shuddered. Out of the shadows came Gollum, wrestling with the unseen Frodo. They struggled, biting and clawing, until Gollum seized Frodo's hand and bit off his finger. Crying out in triumph, he held the ring aloft, and dancing in wild joy, stepped too far. He fell into the fire. The ring at last was unmade. The mountain roared and split apart, rivers of flame bursting forth. The Nazgul, flying toward the peak, were caught in the eruption and burned to nothing. Outside, the hosts of Mordor faltered. Within the mountain, Frodo lay weak and trembling. Sam took his hand, and the two hobbits sat together amid the ruin. In the rising smoke, Frodo smiled faintly. "I'm glad you're with me, Sam," he whispered. "Here, at the end of all things." And the firelight flickered around them as the world of shadow began to crumble. At the Black Gate, Aragorn's army fought on the brink of ruin. Then the earth trembled, and the sky flared with crimson light. The eagles swept down from the clouds, and the Nazgul turned in fear, fleeing toward the fire of Mount Doom. Gandalf lifted his staff and commanded the host to hold their ground, for the hour of judgment had come. At that very moment, deep within the mountain, the ring was unmade. The power of Sauron broke, and his great eye wavered and vanished. Across the plain, the armies of Mordor faltered. Orcs fled shrieking, their minds emptied of purpose, while men who had fought under Sauron threw down their weapons and surrendered. The Dark Lord was gone. Far away upon the slopes of Mount Doom, Frodo and Sam struggled from the ruin of the Crack of Doom. The mountain erupted behind them, and fire rained from the sky. They lay upon the rock, resigned to death. But the wind changed, and above the roar of the fire they heard the beating of great wings. Gandalf, borne by Gwaihir the Wind Lord, came with the eagles and lifted them from the flames. When Sam awoke, It was in sunlight and song. He found himself in a fair land of green trees and clear air, and beside him sat Gandalf. Alive, radiant, and smiling Frodo too was there, healed and whole once more. Before long, they were led to a great gathering in Ithilien, where they beheld the king returned. Aragorn knelt before them and called them his saviors. Then, to the wonder of all, he set Frodo and Sam upon the throne, and all the host of Gondor and Rohan bowed and sang their praise. Many days of peace followed in Ithilien. Merry and Pippin told their tales of battle and triumph. Taller now from the ent draughts they had drunk, Sam listened, eyes wide, though he sighed to learn that no Oliphants had survived the war. At month's end, the army made ready to return to Minas Tirith, for the new age of men had begun. In Minas Tirith, Éowyn lingered in the houses of healing, restless and sorrowful. Her arm still bound, she begged to be released, so that she might ride to war once more. The warden brought her instead to Faramir, now steward of Gondor, who spoke gently to her of patience and of peace. Together they watched the eastern sky and waited for tidings. Days passed, and a strange bond grew between them, born of shared grief and courage. Faramir loved her quietly, though he knew her heart still yearned for the glory of battle and for the love of Aragorn. Then one morning, as they stood upon the walls, they both felt a sudden lightning in the air, the darkness lifting. The shadow had departed. Faramir turned to her and said, "No evil can endure forever." When word came of Frodo and Sam's triumph, the city rejoiced. Ioreth, the healer, told all who would listen that her prophecy had come true. For indeed the hands of the king are the hands of a healer. Yet Éowyn's joy was mingled with weariness. She realized that her hunger for renown had been born from despair, not purpose. And so, when Faramir confessed his love, she let go of her old dreams. She chose to become a healer, not a destroyer, and the two were betrothed. At last Aragorn returned to Minas Tirith in splendor. Faramir surrendered the white rod of stewardship, and Gandalf placed the crown upon Aragorn's brow. The people of Gondor hailed him as Elessar, the Elfstone, king of the reunited realm. Gandalf then led Aragorn to a mountain glade where a sapling of the white tree had taken root. "Behold the sign of your kingdom renewed," he said, and so the city bloomed once more. Soon Elrond, Galadriel, and Celeborn arrived, bringing with them Arwen Undomiel. On Midsummer's Day, beneath the white tree, Aragorn and Arwen were wed, the king and queen of the Fourth Age. The great days of feasting passed, and the hobbits longed for home. Aragorn rode with them part of the way, for the fellowship would not yet be parted. Before they left, Arwen spoke softly to Frodo. She told him that she would remain in Middle-earth and forsake the Undying Lands. But she gave him a gift, her place upon the ship to the west, should his wounds and weariness ever grow too heavy to bear. Together the fellowship rode north to Rohan, where they buried King Theoden with honor in Edoras. There, Faramir and Éowyn announced their betrothal, and Éomer swore friendship to Gondor for all the days of his reign. Gimli and Legolas then fulfilled their promise, visiting together the glittering caves and the green depths of Fangorn Forest. On the road to Isengard, they found that Treebeard had released Saruman, judging him no longer dangerous. Yet when the company met the fallen wizard on the road, he was a pitiful beggar, bitter and spiteful. Merry, out of kindness, gave him a pouch of pipeweed, and Saruman cursed him for it. Thus, unrepentant, he passed into shadow. The fellowship came next to Rivendell, where they found Bilbo, now aged and forgetful, content to spend his days writing and dreaming. Frodo told him the tale of their journey, and Bilbo smiled faintly, saying that it was time for others to finish what he had begun. Before the hobbits departed, Elrond told Frodo that they would meet again, when autumn came, in the Shire. And beside him, he said, would be Bilbo. Frodo kept those words in his heart, but told no one else. When Gandalf and the hobbits reached Bree, they found the town quiet and fearful. The prancing ponies still stood, though the streets were nearly empty. Barlam and Butterbur welcomed them warmly, but with a worried heart, telling them of bandits and dark wanderers who had troubled the land since the rangers vanished. He spoke of murders and burned farms, and of pipeweed gone missing from the South Farthing. "There's trouble in the Shire, mark my words," he said. But he brightened to see them armed and armored, marveling at how much the four small hobbits had changed. Gandalf assured him that a new king now ruled, and that peace would return. When Butterbur heard that this king was none other than Strider the Ranger, he nearly dropped his tray in astonishment. The next morning, as they saddled their horses, Butterbur led forth a familiar friend, Bill the pony, hale and strong. Sam laughed aloud to see him again. They rode on through the wilds toward home. In the shadows of the old forest, Gandalf stopped his horse and turned aside. "I will leave you here," he said. "You no longer need my guidance. You are grown, all of you. Go now and save your own land." And so the four hobbits rode on alone toward the Shire. Merry looked around at the quiet woods and said it felt as though the great adventure had been only a dream. But Frodo, gazing into the twilight, murmured softly, "Perhaps it is we who have awakened, and the Shire that dreams." When the four hobbits at last reached the borders of the Shire, they found a land they scarcely knew. A new gate barred the road, and a notice declared that no one might enter after sunset. The gatekeepers, hobbits themselves, knew them by sight, yet refused to open the way. So Merry and Pippin climbed the gate, opened it by force, and were met by a hulking man they knew too well, Bill Ferny of Bree. But the hobbits had changed. At the glint of their swords, Ferny fled into the night, only to be kicked once more by Bill the pony and never seen again. At the gatehouse they learned the grim tale. Lotho Sackville Baggins, calling himself chief, had taken control of the Shire. Ruffians from the south patrolled the roads, hoarding food and drink, burning firewood, and forbidding pipeweed. The mills belched black smoke, and the clear streams ran foul. The Shire was under tyranny. Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin rode on toward Hobbiton, only to be stopped by a band of sheriffs claiming they were under arrest. But no threats could hold them now. The hobbits pressed on, hearts burning. Merry and Pippin decided that the time had come to rouse their people. They drove off a gang of ruffians with flashing blades and called the hobbits to arms. At Farmer Cotton's house, Sam found Rosie waiting and smiling through her worry. Cotton told them how Lotho had risen to power, selling pipeweed and land to strange men until even the mills and inns were no longer free. Worst of all, a new master had come among the ruffians, one they called Sharky. Lotho himself was seldom seen. Frodo begged that no hobbit blood be shed if it could be helped. But when the ruffians returned and drew weapons, the first arrow flew. So began the Battle of Bywater, the only battle ever fought in the Shire. Merry and Pippin led their people with courage and skill. When it was done, 70 of the enemy lay dead, and 19 hobbits beside them. The Shire was free again, though wounded. When the victors came at last to Bag End, Sam burst into tears. The party tree was gone, the garden torn up, the door broken. "This is worse than Mordor," he said, and within, in the ruined parlor, they found the author of the ruin, Saruman, the fallen wizard, now called Sharky. With cold malice he confessed that he had ordered the destruction out of spite, to defile what the hobbits held dear. The crowd seethed, but Frodo stepped forward and forbade them to kill him. "Do not stain the Shire with his blood," he said. Saruman sneered and turned to leave, summoning his wretched servant Wormtongue. As they passed through the gate, Saruman mocked him, revealing that Wormtongue had murdered Lotho under his orders. Maddened by years of cruelty, Wormtongue struck, stabbing his master to death before falling beneath a hail of hobbit arrows. Saruman's body shriveled to dust, his spirit rising like smoke and vanishing on the wind. And in that moment, the evil that had touched the Shire was ended, yet the scars upon the land and upon the hearts of its people would take long to heal. In the months that followed, the hobbits set themselves to the work of healing. Prisoners were freed from the lockholes, and the ugly mills of Sharky's men were torn down. Sam went about planting trees where they had been cut, using the dust given him by Galadriel and Lothlorien. Wherever he sowed, new life sprang up swiftly, until the Shire was greener than before. At Bag End, Frodo gave refuge to Lobelia Sackville Baggins, who returned the key with tearful apologies for her son's misdeeds. And in the field where the party tree had once stood, Sam planted the silver nut from Galadriel's gift, a Malern tree, the only one of its kind in the Shire. Peace returned, yet Frodo seemed changed. He often sat quietly, his thoughts far away. When Sam looked upon him, he sometimes saw a shadow cross his face, as though he still felt the weight of the ring on the anniversaries of his wounds. Frodo grew pale and restless. At last, Frodo invited Sam to live with him in Bag End. Sam told him of his love for Rosie Cotton, and Frodo smiled, saying that both would be welcome. They were wed soon after, and in time had a daughter, Eleanor, golden-haired like the flowers of Lorien. But Frodo's restlessness deepened. He showed Sam the red book, in which he had written the story of their journey, save for one final chapter, which he left for Sam to finish. Then, one evening, he told Sam that he must go away. Together they rode west, meeting Galadriel, Elrond, and old Bilbo at the Grey Havens. There, on the silent shore, Gandalf awaited them. His work now ended, upon his hand shone Narya, the Ring of Fire, and with Elrond and Galadriel he bore the last of the elven rings back to the west. Merry and Pippin came to bid farewell, and Frodo turned to Sam, eyes filled with peace. "You cannot always be torn in two," he said. "You have so much to enjoy, and to be, and to do." Then Frodo stepped aboard the white ship. As it sailed out upon the sea, he saw a far green country under a swift sunrise. And so he passed beyond the circles of the world. Sam, Merry, and Pippin rode home in silence. When Sam reached Bag End, Rosie met him at the door, Eleanor in her arms. He kissed them both and said simply, "Well, I'm back." Thank you for listening to The Return of the King, the third and final book of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment which tale you would like to hear next. Thanks again, and see you in the next one.